Hello, I hope that you are well and that you are enjoying the summer weather, if that is the weather you are having where you are. Today I'm going to be talking about my June TBR. I actually thought that I wouldn't even make this video just because I filmed so much stuff in May that I still need to edit and share with you, and I don't think that that's coming too soon, but I'm just really excited about some of the books on my June TBR, so in the end I decided to make this video anyways. So let's just jump right in. And the first book that I want to read in June is The Hidden Palace, and this is actually probably one of the few books on my TBR that I am almost 100% certain that I am going to read because I am just really excited about it. I've been looking forward to this book for a really long time. I think it was postponed for like a year a little while back, and I can't wait to read this. This is basically the second part of the Golem and the Genie. I don't know if there's going to be a third or if it's going to be a series, but this is the sequel to that book, and I loved that book. It's funny, but when I first read it, I actually didn't realize that I would love it as much, but my love for it kind of grew over time, and now it has made it to my favorite books of all time lists. I don't really know anything about The Hidden Palace because I didn't want to spoil anything by reading the synopsis, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about The Golem and the Genie in case you want to pick that up. The Golem and the Genie follows two fantastical characters, one of whom is a female golem named Hava, and she was created by her master to, well, be his wife. Which is not a very enjoyable role, but luckily for her, her master dies very soon after she wakes up. I mean, he's dead, so it's sad and all that, but he wasn't a very nice man to begin with, I think. We don't really know much about him. I didn't really care about him. I don't know why I'm trying to kind of justify my lack of emotion towards the death of a fictional character. Anyways, he's dead, she's free, but she doesn't really know what to do with her freedom, and she's kind of new to the world. She doesn't really understand how things work all that well, and she kind of has a hole in her heart, let's say that is supposed to be filled by a master just because of her nature. So she struggles with that a lot throughout the book. Luckily, she ends up getting some help from some nice people, she ends up making some friends, and eventually she meets our second main character, who is a genie. And we do get a little bit about his backstory, and this genie was trapped for a very long time until he is released in the same time period that Hava has been created, which by the way is the 19th century. And this genie, whose name is Ahmed, he still doesn't have all of his powers, he's still kind of bound. So he's not especially happy, but he kind of finds solace in this world, and he starts helping the person who released him with metalworking. And eventually, he meets Hava. There's a whole other story of this sort of darker wizard and how our two main characters are involved, but I'm not really going to tell you much about that because it will be a spoiler. Suffice it to say that there is a darker power, but I don't think that it's as big of a part of the book as one might expect. It's more about how these characters kind of try to fit into their world and learn about the world, and how they kind of encounter each other and realize that their relationship is actually developing, and to try to figure out where that is going. I'm not sure if I explained this very well, but it is a great book. It's a little slow, but I love it, and if any of this sounds interesting, you should definitely pick that up. Ooh, and I forgot to mention, The Hidden Palace actually comes out on June 8th, so I am really excited to pick that up. The next item on my TBR is For the Wolf, and this comes out on June 1st. And I don't know too much about this because it's been a while since I read the synopsis, and I don't really want to read it again because I kind of want the element of surprise. But from what I understand, it's basically a twist on the traditional Red Riding Hood story. A girl is kind of sacrificed or given to the wolf. It's sort of a romance story, I guess, with a monster boyfriend, I think someone called it. But the thing that really caught my attention about this book is that it was described as being written for fans of Uprooted and The Bear and the Nightingale. And these two books are actually on my list of favorite books of all time as well, so obviously I'm going to read this one and see if this is actually true, and I'm going to love it as much as I loved those books. Number 3 is Daughter of Sparta, which is supposed to come out on June 8th. And this is pretty much a Greek mythology inspired book. Here we have a girl in Sparta, and the goddess Artemis threatens the life of Daphne's brother. So in order for Daphne to kind of rescue him, from what I understand, she has to do something for the goddess. And she's aided by the god Apollo. And this is supposed to be a retelling of the Greek myth Daphne and Apollo. So I'm really excited to read this. I haven't read anything that was inspired by Greek mythology in quite a while. This is definitely something that I am interested in. Next up we have Ace of Spades, and this is another book that I don't know too much about, but I've seen it on the most anticipated releases lists of quite a few booktubers. I don't know, it kind of grew on me. Supposedly this is a dark academia thriller, and I'm not a big fan of thrillers actually, but I'm a big fan of dark academia books. So this is kind of a book that's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I think that it's really nice to pick up books like that every once in a while. Also, just like a few of the other books that I mentioned or will mention in this TBR, this is actually a debut book for this new author. I've already mentioned this, but I think that it's really nice to support new authors by sort of reading their books early, rather than only authors that have been kind of tested by other readers. So I do want to try to read more debut books, and this seems like a good option. The next 2 books in my TBR are books 1 and 2 of the Goblin Emperor series, or trilogy, maybe? Anyways, book 1 has been out for a while, but book 2 is actually supposed to come out on June 22nd. And I haven't read either one, but I've heard really great things about the first book, so I am thinking that now might be the right time for me to read it. I didn't read the synopsis of the second book because, of course, I haven't read the first one, so I don't want to be spoiled. But the first one is apparently about a half-goblin prince whose father and brothers were all killed, so now he has to take the throne, even though he never expected to and was never trained to, and has lived in exile for most of his life. So now he's just thrust into this court with conspiracies and danger and politics and all of the things that he has no idea how to navigate. That actually seems fairly interesting, especially the hobgoblin aspect, and I know that this book got great reviews, so I'm curious to read it and find out for myself if I like it. Next up is My Contrary Mary, which is supposed to come out on June 22nd. And I haven't actually read any books by this author, but again, I've heard some really great things about this author in general, so I thought that a good point to jump into her work would be with her latest book, because a lot of the time authors improve as they write, so probably her latest book is going to be the best quality work. But we will see. Anyways, this book is on my TBR. As for what this book is actually about, this is supposedly about Mary, Queen of Scots, who turns into a mouse. And apparently that is very bad in this particular world. But not all is lost, because her betrothed, Francis, actually knows her secret and supports her. But if anyone else was to find out, she would be in real trouble. And she kind of has to navigate court life with that little burden. This definitely sounds different from what I normally read, and I am intrigued. Numbers 8 to 11 is Orange, volumes 3 to 6. And this is a manga series, and I don't read much manga, but I'm starting to get more into it lately, as well as graphic novels, and this is one of the series that was very highly recommended by a lot of people and has really good reviews, so I wanted to get into it. Not gonna lie, the first book didn't really interest me, but I still picked up the second book hoping that it will get better, and it did, and I'm definitely intrigued. I'm not in love with this series, but maybe once I read the rest of it, I will be. Of course, if I absolutely hate the next few volumes, I am unlikely to pick up the rest, but we will see. By the way, volume 6 I'm actually planning to read for a romance readathon that I plan to be doing in June, but you will hopefully find out more about that later when I actually do it. And on that note, the next 3 books are actually ones that I'm planning to read for that particular readathon. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about them because I will be talking more about them when I read them for that. Anyways, book number 12 is Blood Like Magic. This is supposed to come out on June 15th, and this is about a witch who is supposed to sacrifice her first love to save her family's magic. I have to say that the premise does intrigue me. I haven't really read any books with a similar story, so this might be an interesting read. Next up we have The Chosen and the Beautiful. Comfortable, which is supposed to be a sort of fantasy version of The Great Gatsby. Not gonna lie, when I read The Great Gatsby for school, I didn't like it all that much. Not because I didn't really like it, the writing is gorgeous, it flows beautifully, but mostly because it was analyzed so much that it kind of sucked the joy out of the book by the end. I feel like if it had been analyzed a little bit less, I would have liked it more. But I do understand why it was analyzed so much. There is a lot in that book to kind of absorb and think about. So, my battery died, and I have no idea where I stopped, but hopefully it wasn't too far. So let me just tell you about my last book, which is Lost in Las Vegas by Kristen Painter. And I've picked up a bunch of her books over the years before, and they're basically just really cozy, comfortable, kind of paranormal fantasy type, sometimes romance, sometimes mysteries. And that's pretty much all I have to say about them. The writing isn't spectacular, but the books are fun and they're cozy and they're comfortable. So I pick them up every once in a while when I'm in the mood for that feeling. And I'm sure that this book is going to be pretty much the same. And it's actually on my TBR also for the romance readathon, which I will tell you more about later. And that's it. That is my TBR for the month. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get through all of these books, or even if I will want to, but I definitely have a few books on this list that I am almost 100% sure that I'm going to read, like The Hidden Palace, and also probably the books that I picked out for my romance readathon. Anyways, let me know what you're planning to read for the month of June, and if you're interested in any of the books I mentioned. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing month. Be you, always. Bye!